think we're going into dangerous territory here. There is absolutely a difference between freedom of speech and someone heckling and threatening and putting folks' lives in danger. I mean, I think I saw something on Twitter last night about a protest at Ole Miss years ago during the civil rights movement, and reporters were reporting on the issue. Folks were standing outside, and the mob were heckling the reporters, and it ended in a brawl where a reporter lost his life. And so these are dangerous times for lots of people, and unfortunately the media included. And I just wish that the president would take the reins and help dial back this rhetoric.
Look, this is the type of behavior that happens in authoritarian societies, where leaders and their supporters are pushing down the media, pushing down people who are protesting. And this is something that people watch the United States and they say, what is this president, what are their spokespeople doing? They are repressing free speech. They are repressing the rights of the media. It's not only dangerous, it's sending a terrible message to the world. I know when I was the State Department spokesperson, I had people who were in that briefing room who were from the government of China, the government of Russia, who would yell at me and make absurd claims. Fox News impugned my reputation multiple times. You still took questions from them.
We took a couple of waxy on this show, too.
Sure. You still took questions from them. Yeah. You still, served the government. You still are serving the American people, and that's part of your job.
And they went after you last week because you were asking the White House. I mean, went after you last week because you were trying to ask some questions at a pool spray, and then there was this whole thing where they banned you from an event.
Yeah, I think they're separate situations. They didn't like the questions that I asked the president. They didn't think they were appropriate to ask in front of another world leader, which I did in the Oval Office. That's different when the White House is trying to restrict that speech, trying to restrict you from being able to ask questions of the president. I do think that those supporters last night at that rally in Tampa do have free speech. They can chant whatever they would want like that. I also think a lot of people at that rally aren't like that and don't go and chant things like that.
Most of them are not like that.
Right. A lot of them are decent people who do not feel that way about the media. They go home and watch the news at night and all of those things. I do think that is a minority doing that. But also, I think the reason this is newsworthy and the reason that the White House is having to answer for it is because the president retweeted a video of it happening that his son had tweeted out. So I think that raises the question of, is the president endorsing behavior like this? Certainly at those rallies, he's the one who calls out the media at the back of the room, gets everyone to turn around, boo them, hiss at them, whatever they do. So I do think that he does play a role in it. I think that's why the White House is being questioned about it. But I do think that there should be free speech, obviously.
Of course, and there's people who are on the left who also get excited, not to the same degree, and not about the same exact things, obviously.
We should point out. I just want to point out a few weeks ago, Shannon Bream from Fox was trying to do a live shot outside the Supreme Court. And she felt, I wasn't there, I didn't witness it, it wasn't on camera as far as I know, but she felt like it wasn't safe for her to stay there, and she went indoors, and that was obviously progressives, liberals heckling her. The problem is that it doesn't end. It just keeps descending, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and that's why you need a president or a White House to say, we don't support that. Reporters should be able to do their jobs.
I think you need leaders in general to do that. You know, we hear, and look, I've made no secret, I'm not a fan of this, right? I've spent my entire career working with the press, and I believe that there is a very important function to play. As many times as I've taken calls from folks and not liked the questions, I still think it's important. All that being said, I think we talk too much about it, because I think that the common decency piece of this has less to do with the press and more to do with everything. I've had, you mentioned my former boss, Senator McConnell. I don't think he's had lunch in 3 weeks without being heckled by a crowd of anti-ICE protesters who are trying to disrupt his lunch and everybody else there, and trying to bully people and trying to get people basically intimidated.
Yeah.
And like, that is just, there is no place in a society that is built on the rule of law, on respect of others. And does the president have a role in that? Absolutely. But so does everybody else.
Can I just say something? Because Josh one, I'd like to point out when I said that there's a difference between freedom of speech and folks threatening the lives of other folks and heckling them. Not to say that they don't have freedom of speech, but, people are free to say whatever they want, but not without consequence. If folks were yelling the N-word in that crowd or slurs about LGBTQ plus people, I think we would not be defending that in any way, shape, or form, and not that anyone is. But secondly, Josh made a point earlier about the fact that the rules have changed under President Trump. That President Trump, has not necessarily done things the way that they have always always been done. And so if the rules have in fact changed, which I do believe they have, I think we have to also get creative and change with the times. So while I don't, again, like I noted on this show, I want to go to Shake Shack and eat my burger without being heckled. But damn it, kids are in cages. And kids are in cages at the border and all over and being ripped away from their families all over this country. And there are many people that feel as though Republicans in Congress haven't done enough about it. And so if Mitch McConnell can't eat in peace, maybe that's the rule, that's the name of the game at this point in time.
I feel like what you're doing right now is making the situation worse. Nobody is suggesting that you shouldn't be passionate about issues. Nobody is suggesting that there are not venues to express your opinion. What I'm suggesting, and I think what I hope most people would agree with, is it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to accost public officials in a public place with their family and try to make things uncomfortable for everybody to a point where they fear for their own safety. I think we should be able to all agree on that, at a bare minimum.
I think it's clear that Senator McConnell was not being accosted in public by your description. I think the point Simone is making.
Did you see the video when he and his wife were coming out of the building and people came up to them and as they were trying to get into the car? There was some time.
There's been like four different events.
I think that people being uncomfortable, that we should be comfortable with that. There's a difference between that and President Trump inciting violence.
Well, let me get this straight.
People.
We are deadly concerned about a press bullpen that is protected by Secret Service, about the health and well-being of that press. I am, actually. But as a panel, we've decided that that is significant. What's insignificant is a public official having lunch being accosted by people.
First of all,
maybe it's because he's a Republican.
I don't think anyone's saying that. Just for the record, we covered this when this happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. And
I'm not saying there's a bias against
we don't think that there is. I'm not saying that there is a difference or a distinction. People should be able to live their lives. But I think one of the questions is President Trump's role in this, right? I mean, people are going to be unruly left, right, center, but especially left and right. But what is the role of a president in that unruliness? Is he responsible to stop it or to tamp things down?
That's the core question. And when you say we're talking about it too much, I just disagree with that. We should be talking about it more.
Civility in general, we should talk about more, right?
Of course, but look, President Obama was accosted often. I mean, there were people who were protesting him at probably nearly every event. When you're a public official, that's what happens. I'm not saying we should condone it, but it is something that happens. The President of the United States should be the person who is calling for calm, who is greeting the protesters or greeting people who disagree with him.
I agree with you. Everything you said I agree with, except as a panel, we have just concluded that it's okay if people accost public officials. That's just the price of being a public official.
I want to be clear that there's a difference between heckling. I think there's a difference between the president and his supporters inciting violence against reporters for doing their job and reporting the news, and I think there is a difference in that, and people who are organizing and protesting and using, the tools at their disposal, whether it's organizing outside of a member of Congress office or organizing outside of a restaurant to raise issues or to raise their voices on issues that matter. We cannot, in my opinion, equate what a lot of the Trump supporters are doing and the president is doing to folks on the left who are concerned about their well-being. It is not ridiculous. It is literally life or death for so many people in this country.
Just because
so many
of what
people
you
in
feel
this country
does not make it
It's not about what they feel, Josh. I think you're operating from a position of privilege because you do not leave your house every day in fear. There are people that leave their house and there are people that leave their homes every day and wonder if they'll be snatched off the streets and deported, rounded up and deported. There are people.
Your concern for the safety has everything to do with the ideology of the person who's
There are people that walk out of their homes every day, get in the car and drive, and for fear they'll be pulled over and maybe shot and killed by a police officer because the altercation might go wrong.
What does that have to do with the conversation?
It has to do with everything. So people are organizing and rising up because this is what they feel they need to do in this moment.
I want to give Josh the last word, and then we have to take a break.
Folks with the Trump supporters.
I want to give Josh the last word, and then we'll take a break.
My whole point is civility doesn't have a partisanship to it. It doesn't. It's a Republican problem, a Democrat problem. We all should speak to it. And I think it does a disservice to all of this when we make it a partisan issue.